you got for Johnny? Hit the Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line. That number is 646-866-4686. Johnny, let me ask you, to stay with the theme of today's show, do you have in your history or memory a favorite Hail Mary? Because there are more than we remember at a time like this, given all the discussion surrounding what I think is an historic one involving the Bears yesterday. Historic to the extent that you've got a player on the field celebrating a victory back into the action after the ball's been hiked. I think ESPN timed it. I think they said Stevenson, it took him 7 seconds into the play for him to turn around and actually engage on the field. Do you have a favorite Hail Mary moment?
Yeah, I'm trying to think right off the top of my head, but one that was particularly, I think, impactful for me is I was pretty young at the time. I can't remember how young I was, but I was on a family trip. We had stopped at some kind of smaller town pub for dinner on this road trip, and we were watching. There's a game on TV, and it was Colorado versus Michigan.
Yes.
Cordell Stewart throws, I think it was Westbrook, right? That caught the Hail Mary to beat Michigan. My dad and I were kind of Michigan fans, so we were a little upset about it, but I remember Cordell just running around the field going crazy. And then I remember a guy who was sitting at the bar just storms out of the place and slams the door open as he's run out. He's yelling and he's cursing. And I'm trying to process, why? He's like, wow, he must really like the Wolverines. And my dad said, no, son, I think you probably had some money on the game. And that's when I first kind of learned about gambling and kind of what all that meant. And he explained a little bit to me. So that's just one that sticks out in my mind of just a visceral memory of
That's
a
good one. That's an underrated one. That was September 24, 1994, known as the Miracle at Michigan. Stewart throws a 64-yard touchdown pass to, you mentioned it, Michael Westbrook, to beat Michigan 27-26. Ball travels 73 yards in the air from the Colorado 26.
It was an unbelievable throw.
It was. To the opposite 1-yard line, was tipped by Blake Anderson, then caught by Westbrook 4 yards deep in the end zone. And, I'm looking at, Wikipedia's got a very nice compilation here. And it is a reminder why, these are the kinds of plays that cement memories, right? These are the kinds of plays that create the kind of, sort of unique relationship between fans and sports, right? Ridiculously, how is that possible? Improbable, to what a hell of a play, to what a bonehead decision, whatever it may be. These are the variations of the Hail Mary. Obviously, I think are why a lot of people end up being as emotional about sports as they are.
Yeah, 1,000%. And I think, honestly, it's maybe even more important to have these in the modern era of sports consumption, because I think that the one thing that seems to really still appeal to sports fans and even to kids and stuff as they're getting interested in this stuff and have so many other distractions is that it's unscripted.
Yes.
You just don't know what is going to happen. Anything can happen, even a miracle like the Commanders won, like that Cordell Stewart one, whatever, Flutie, all of them. It's just it just gives you a reason to stick around just in case, because, hey, we just saw this last week, and maybe you never know. And I think that's the beauty of sports, is you just never know. And very few plays encapsulate the you never know nature of being a sports fan than the Hail Mary.
Another one that I guess I don't have much recollection of this one, but this one's awfully dramatic. Let me see if I can find the details on it before we get to some other stuff. October 1, 2016. Either of you remember this one? After a 47-yard touchdown pass with 10 seconds remaining on the clock, a Georgia player took off his helmet during the celebration, resulting in a 15-yard unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. So then the kickoff was returned to the Georgia 43-yard line, and on the final play, Texas quarterback Joshua Dobbs. Is that Pasternack Dobbs? It's got to be.
Tennessee, yeah.
What did I? Yeah, Tennessee
You said
quarterback.
Texas.
I said Texas. Tennessee quarterback Joshua Dobbs. By the way, now a commercial star, along with, by the way, Case Keenum. All our backup quarterbacks turn into great commercial successes. Threw a game-winning touchdown caught by Juwan Jennings as time expired to win that game, 34-31. I don't have much recollection of that one.
I had no recollection of it, but I do remember that on the day of Dobbs's miracle with the Vikings in Atlanta, I teamed up with Alec Lewis on just kind of a profile of him as much as we could in the moment, and I talked to one of his coaches who mentioned the Juwan Jennings play, one of his college coaches, and so that's when I went back and looked at the video of it, but I had zero recollection of it in the moment. But it was a huge play in Tennessee. Lord, get Scoggins on. I bet he could spin a yarn about that one.
There's no question about that. All right, so when the Vikings are off, or of course they played earlier in the week, it gives you a chance to sort of, take stock of the entire division, other teams playing. Bears do what they do. Lions do what they do, which is score relentlessly, in this case without even really throwing the ball all that effectively or needing to. And the Packers end up surviving on another, for the second straight week, a field goal, a relative chip shot at the buzzer. So do we feel better or worse about the Vikings at this point? Are we seeing a pecking order in which it's the Lions division? What do we see, Johnny, when we look at the division at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Dan, that as of right now, I think it's pretty clear that the Lions are the best team in the division, and I think they might be the best team in the whole dang thing. I mean, maybe the Chiefs are, but the way that they play, the groove that they seem to have found offensively, as aggressive as they are, the way that they're beating people, winning, the way that lopsidedly this week, I just think that they are a cut above everyone else. I think the Vikings and the Packers and the Bears, we'll see about them as they jockey for position over, these next several weeks. But I'd be shocked if by the end of this season, it's not the Lions in first place and then Vikings, Packers. I think the Bears might fall off just a little bit if their schedule gets a little tougher. But, kind of jockeying for that second, that's the second place and a wild card berth in the playoffs. It just seems that clear to me right now.
Texture to you directly. Johnny, is there a guy, this is from Paul, sitting on a couch somewhere who's of solid height and bulk, long arms, very athletic, gets set quickly, nice lateral movement, consistent footwork, mirrors well, and has tremendous football IQ? And if we don't find such a guy, are the Vikings' 2024 Super Bowl aspirations toast?
Yeah, I think I might call Dale Mulner, who was the one of our tackles for Blaine in 1996 when we went to the Prep Bowl. I know he's available. He's 45, 46 years old right now, so he might not be in tip-top shape, but that's where I would start because finding left tackles right now at this juncture, either on the street or via trade, is incredibly difficult. And I am concerned about what Darrisaw's injury means for the Vikings and for, their chances of remaining a solid offense as they have been, protecting Sam Darnold, making sure he does not get sped up and turn the ball over as he can be wont to do. So I think it's a huge, it's going to be not impossible to overcome. I think they can figure out some ways, but I don't know that there's someone just sitting out there that is going to be an option to come in and just really be someone you can really rely on. They're hard to find in the Vikings, even if they want to get into the trade market. They don't have a whole lot of trade assets to peddle here, so they're in a really tough spot with the Darrisaw injury.
Let's get a quick break in now. Lots more to get to with Johnny, including some early season thoughts on his favorite basketball team. Part 2 with Jonny Athletic. Don't forget Ben Lieber later this hour, and we've also got Cam Bynum after Top 5 at 5.
And the fan and 2 men in a junk truck. That's what money means. Want to give you a shot to put $1,000 in your hand with our National Cash Contest. Keyword is check. Go to KFAN.com and enter the keyword check.
Jonny Athletic, Part 2. Real quick on one other thing, Vikings related. Are you buying the Jordan Addison explanation regarding his free 3 comment, that it had nothing to do with him sending a signal that he wants to be freed, as a receiver, as in have more opportunities to catch passes, that all he was attempting to do was to extol the virtues of our new place kicker, Will Reichard. As in, it's free 3, baby, anytime we get past midfield, because he's been such a good kicker. I sense from your laugh that you're not certain that you are willing to accept this version.
I love the version of it. I think it's an incredible kind of excuse, justification. See, you were missing it all along type of a deal. But I have been around too many receivers over too long of a time to take that at face value, unfortunately. So I will give him all sorts of points for creativity.
Yes.
And
and
anything, anything that would suggest like that's a great concoction, Dan. I can't buy into that one. I think that there's a little frustration there. I'd like to see him get open a little bit more. He just seems to be pretty quiet, but let's get some diva receiver stuff going, because it's been too long since we've had that around here.
I wish I were there for the moment where he goes, how can I get out of this? Oh, wait a minute. We got a great kicker. That's like a free 3 points when we get past midfield. That's it. I want to give proper credit to my place kicker, because that's all, as a diva receiver, I think about is our place kicker being very good.
So I didn't even see him say it. So he actually said that.
Well, I think he tweeted. It was either a tweet or it was something online. It was a social media message that he conveyed without any explanation, and then people made the assumption that he was talking about his own frustration, and that then his somebody, I think eventually somebody ended up asking him about it, and it's like, no, I just love Will Reichard. I can't get enough Will Reichard. Is what I don't remember. Maybe he's a different kind of wide receiver, right? But I just don't remember that many wide receivers that obsessed with even an effective place kicker.
No, definitely not. It's just like there's no way. But again, that's why I love it. I just hearken back to when Diggsy was here.
Yes.
And, talking to us and giving us the fake cough for, why he was gone from practice. I'm sick kind of thing. And
yes.
I mean, just classic receiver behavior. So, I actually like Jordan Addison more because he said that. Like it's an amazing concoction to come up with something like that. Maybe have fun with the bit. Go for it. That's great.
If he's that creative on the field starting Sunday night, then it'll be wonderful, right? Because
the Colts are not ready for what he's got for them. If that's an indicative of the creative route running that we're going to see.
All right, let's get to your Wolves club. They opened at home. What was it? Friday night? No, Saturday. What night was it? I watched
Saturday.
it. Saturday night. Yeah, Saturday night against the Toronto Raptors. They never really seemed to be in significant trouble. Had stretches where they played very, very well. The early part of this season, I think, is obviously about two things. When you're trying to be a contender, it has to start still with winning, right? You never want to give away games, especially in this conference. And the other half of it, when you make a trade this huge and change the core of your team, you change a starter, and you change really the first guy or second guy, depending on Naz Reid, who's going to be coming off the bench and potentially even finishing some games as well. It's about how you integrate those individuals into what you are doing. What are we learning thus far on, what Finchie is starting to figure out and what these combinations might look like?
Yeah, we were talking to Chris Finch today at practice, Dan, and I thought he was pretty candid in terms of saying that, look, he's not really on the cusp of finding exactly what his rotations are going to be, the lineup combinations, kind of all of the things that need to come together. And it doesn't need to come together in the first couple of games, but he wants to get that eventually into a pretty regular rotation. And he's not there yet. He's experimenting. He's kind of fidgeting with stuff. And I do think that I may personally have underrated a little bit of just what that process is like. I mean, that trade of Cat to New York for DiVincenzo and Randall, it was a seismic move. And I think that, you think, okay, they'll just plug them in and they have plenty of training camp time and this will be fine. And no, it's not. It's going to take time. And I think we're seeing that. We're seeing really good glimmers and stretches of basketball, the last 2 games in particular, in Sacramento and at home on Saturday. But there's still long stretches of stagnancy, of hesitation, of turnovers, and that's all part of a group that is still searching for the right mix. And so I think it's going to take still a little while yet, Dan. I think it's going to be some time for everyone to get a good feel of each other and for Chris Finch to really understand and know what are the best combinations to throw out there at a given time against different opponents and all of those things.
I hope he is continuing to nurture the notion that the Wolves want to run more, that part of this process is finding ways to get ahead of the defense, to not always have to, set up against a set-up defense. And I thought there were times I saw it, because I think even, Randall is not a plotter exactly. I mean, Randall can run, I think, a little bit if you urge him and make that an emphasis of what you do. And you've got a number of other athletes on this team that can move. So I hope we're seeing that. I hope we see more of it, because I do think if in the ways, we all talked about making this offense better. And to me, that's got to be one of the ways. Just get some cheapy baskets, get ahead of it, get to the free throw line, take the ball to the basket hard. DiVincenzo clearly likes doing that. We know Edwards can certainly do that. And I think in the semi-open court, you got several other players who can do it as well.
Yeah, it's been a point of emphasis for Finch throughout the preseason and training camp, and certainly at the start of the season. They were not good with it against the Lakers. They weren't all that great with it against the Kings. But yeah, you did start to see them find ways to get the break started. And I think that one thing that Finch has emphasized with his group is, especially with Julius Randle and Naz Reid both, if they can get rebounds defensively, which is the key, grab it and just go. And that's what he wants them to do more. He wants them to be aggressive in turning and getting up the court, because both of them can really handle the ball and make passes and get things moving in a way that Towns was not kind of able to do. And so I think that the opportunities are going to be there, and they're trying to breathe that more into it with the DiVincenzo in transition threes, with Jaden McDaniels going to the basket. They have a lot of tools to do it. It's just that you can see that they're still working through some hesitancy around where each other is going to be, and it's hard for them to really put their foot all the way down, pedal to the metal, when they're still figuring that part of it out.
Are we seeing already a little sign of what was the close game we had? This last one wasn't really that close, but
Sacramento.
Yeah. Are we seeing a little bit of offense-defense substitutions late that might be part of the signature of the club moving forward?
Yeah, I think so, Dan. And Finch, another really good comment after that Sacramento game. He said, I have a lot of options, and I am not going to pick the right one every single time. And I thought that was pretty telling of a coach that still doesn't have a great feel for how this is all working out, that he's figuring that out in real time. But you're right. I mean, you can go with Mike Conley offensively, on those possessions, pull him out for DiVincenzo, Nickeil Alexander-Walker as defensively. Same in the front court. I think you'll see there are going to be times where, I thought that, one thing that was really interesting, the Kings had a chance to go for 3 at the end to win the game. And Rudy Gobert was not on the court on defensively because they needed smaller guys to chase around their shooters. And so I do think that Chris Finch is going to be much more flexible with all of his lineups, but particularly with the closing end of game situations than maybe he had been in the past, when you really did have a more defined best 5, and then you had the couple of guys coming off of the bench. He's going to be a little more creative in going situationally with different lineups out there, whether it's offensively and defensively, whether it's some guys shooting well tonight and some guy isn't. I think there's going to have to be a little bit more malleability from Chris Finch, and he's showing that early on.
Thank you, Johnny. We will chat next week. Appreciate you.
You got it. Thanks, Dan.
That's John Krasinski, who joins us this time of year pretty much every Monday. Yet to come in this hour, we've got Ben Lieber about 15, 20 minutes from now. And Viking safety Cam Bynum will return to the program. That's scheduled for about 5:15 or so. We've got some texts that I want to get into. A couple of other items as we get ever closer to Election Day 2024. Stay confused because we've got a Jordan Addison fan who was listening to our conversation with John Krasinski saying, you and the rest of you media jackals need to do some research before creating controversy. Hold on a second. Let me scroll down to finish that thought. That's been Addison's slogan since college. Look up his draft day outfit. What does his chain say? Well, but then I'm confused because what Addison is now telling people is it's got nothing to do with whatever his mantra has been previously. He's saying it's his salute to our rookie place kicker being so good. So which is it, right? I mean, it's like that would be my answer, I guess, to 651 guy. It's like, well, maybe that's been his mantra, but he's now saying it's related to something else, which would seem to indicate he's trying to scramble his way out of any potential controversy or anybody wondering, are you trying to make some kind of a statement that you don't believe you're being properly utilized by your favorite football team, the Minnesota Vikings. And by the way, we never to this day have had properly vetted his sick dog, right?
What happened to the dog?
We never have found out how it happened to the dog. Is the dog still with him? What breed was the dog? Has the dog been given up for adoption?
What was wrong with the dog
originally? I have absolutely no idea, but I thought that was pretty interesting. Is it a foregone conclusion that this team will break the franchise record for three-point attempts? And are Dan and Johnny okay with that? I'm okay with it.
The Timberwolves you're talking about.
Yeah, in that case, you're talking about the Wolves. I'm in the middle on it. I don't want to do it for the sake of doing it, but I think they probably, as a pretty good last year three-point shooting team, they probably didn't take enough. And I think that's part of what DiVincenzo brings.
Yeah.
Right?
He's a gunner.
Randall's not, I don't think, statistically a great three-point shooter, although I think from certain parts of the court, he's pretty effective. We know you lost Towns, who was your best three-point shooter. It's not complicated for me. I don't want to take them if you can't make them. And I know it's a math formula, right? If you make enough of them, you can live with. I think was it this last game or the game before we took like 52,
right?
So we probably should take more than we have. On the other hand, I don't want to make that an utter priority, depending on what else is going on. Do you?
No. My questions are: who's taking them? From where are they taking them? And how are they getting them? You know what I mean? Because they had that stretch. I think the Sacramento game was when they were 20 for 50.
Yes.
And that completely flipped the game with a couple of guys hitting threes, whether it was Ant. I think Naz Reid had a big one. But it was because the ball was flipping around. Ant had a nice pass to Naz in the corner. I think Nah hit one too, but it was because the ball was moving and guys were open. It wasn't like the threes I don't like are the Ant step backs, which you have to live with. But when Jaden McDaniels is doing step-back threes, I don't love those. You know what I mean?
Correct,
So
yes.
For me, it's all about what are the three-pointers that they're getting and how are they getting them. If they're getting good looks because the ball's moving, I think they've got guys that can knock them down.
We may discuss this with our next guest, Ben Lieber, who's coming up shortly. But our next opponent is the Indianapolis Colts.
Got some quarterback issues.
It's a Sunday night game, and Anthony Richardson completed, I don't know that it's been a long time since I've seen this sort of percentage, or maybe I haven't been paying enough attention to other Richardson games. He attempted 32 passes and he completed 10.
Yeah.
10 for 32, 175 yards. He did complete a long touchdown pass, and a couple people have said his receivers didn't help one another a couple of other plays. But when you complete 44% in this day and age of your pass attempts, let me back up. For the season, he's completed 44.4% of his passes.
That's what's crazy.
And this day and age, that's just like incomprehensible. I think the Colts are committed to staying with him, even though Joe Flacco had played very well for them.
Their coach today said everything is up for evaluation.
Oh, he did?
Yes,
Oh, interesting.
He wasn't very committal.
Well, and what's also kind of intriguing about that is Richardson's getting some flack or a little bit of pushback because for a late third quarter play, he was not on the field. He had apparently just scrambled a couple times, and he admitted after the game, I was tired. I ain't going to lie. There was a lot of running right there. I didn't think I was going to be able to go to the next play, so I told Shane, the coach, I just needed a break right there.
That's tough.
Which is, for that position. Now, again, he is a runner. I mean, this is routinely done with receivers, right, who've run a couple of long fly pattern routes.
They just walk back to the sideline.
And they go walk to the sidelines. It's a little tougher to finesse if it's a quarterback who's trying to figure the thing out, has been struggling, and it's showing up more in part because, like I said, Flacco has shown, as a passer, he's been around for 52 years, but he's been pretty effective. The Colts have a legitimate record, do they not? They lost this game to the Texans, and I think it was a fairly close game. But he strikes me as the kind of guy, I don't know, maybe if you're a defensive coordinator, it's nightmarish because he's athletic as hell. Yep. He clearly can make 2 or 3 plays where you can go 65 yards. Maybe he can do, his version of the Hail Mary would be to scramble for 75 yards and a touchdown, and you would need a spy for him. But his passing is just a joke. There's no consistency to it whatsoever. Accuracy is all over the place. And so that might, in some ways, be appealing if you're a defensive coordinator who's looking for a week, not a week off, but a little easier week after the last few for the Vikings. On the other hand, he's a wild card guy who can make one play where suddenly it's 80 yards downfield.
Colts are 4-4. I mentioned that they're non-committal, at least as of today, on what the plan is moving forward at the quarterback spot. This taking yourself out of the game thing is not playing well, as you could imagine.
No.
My question is, who would you rather face if you're the Vikings?
Yeah.
I think you'd rather face Richardson.
I don't think you do, too.
I mean, I know Flacco's 100.
Can't move, yeah.
But he's a professional, and he knows what he's doing.
And he knows how to get rid of the ball.
Yes, he does.
And we've had problems against quarterbacks who know how to get rid of the ball. So that will be worth watching the rest of the week for sure. Let's come back, and maybe we'll ask Nacho about that very question. Maybe his worst Hail Mary experience, and so much more regarding the National Football Conference North and his favorite football team. Nacho Lieber is